What made you realize the relationship was over? I once googled how do you know when a relationship is over, and the top suggestion was you Google it. He kept breaking up with me and then making up with me. Broke up with me on my birthday because he wasn't getting my undivided attention as my best friend was there. Called me for 6 months after trying to get back with me. Called me a fucking weasel. His family still tries to reach out over 11 years later. I realized that I wouldn't care if he cheated on me and would have been quite happy if he left me for someone else. I felt trapped and didn't know how to leave at the time. Edit. Wow, this is by far my most popular comment on anything. LOL. We have a child together and share custody, so he will always be in my life, but it's still better than having to walk on eggshells in my own home. I'm very sorry to those of you going through this now. I hope you find happiness one day. My ex, who was a major control freak, worked for an attorney. As a tool to get her way, she would prepare divorce papers and bring them home. The third time she pulled this, I signed them and made her file them. Game over. When her sister called me and said, "You're a really nice guy and I like you. Remember Jason? You do?" "Yeah." "Well, she's fucking him in the other room as we speak." That's pretty much when I knew. When I realized, I only smiled, laughed and had fun when he wasn't around. When he was, I walked on eggshells so he wouldn't get mad. Edit. Wow. I'm surprised and a little saddened that this has gotten so many responses. If your situation is similar from either perspective, there's no shame in walking away. Prioritize yourself and your mental health to help put you in a healthier situation. When I decided to not text her to see if she would ever start a conversation, and did not text me for an entire month. A night he told me that I was no longer allowed to drive anywhere by myself, that he would keep the keys and I would have to ask him to drive me places so he knew where I was going and who I was with. I was gone the next day after 16. Never ever thought anyone would even read what I posted. I am tearing up right now from the support. My friends, my anxiety was always getting triggered. She yelled and screamed at me every day for 2 years, and when the beating started, I realized the last good week we had was when we got married. Did therapy and got myself back on track. Now I'm dating my best friend and she makes me feel like a king. When I was explaining to a friend why I was still with them, and all of it was, "It's my fault, I did too much for them so I have to show them how to live on their own now" type stuff. Their response to me was, "Shouldn't it be more on the road of I love him so much I want to be with them? Get off of them," because I started seeing his emotional manipulation for what it was. Instead of getting caught up in the anxiety and just quietly going along with whatever he wanted, to make it easier. At me all riled up on purpose, and then turn around and say that I'm unstable, because how can I react like that after he just spent like 30 minutes doing the most juvenile stuff to get me to that point? I mean, like put hands over his ears and go la la la. Tell me to calm my tits after he did something either neglectful or hurtful. He would belittle my feelings and tell me to deal with it because nothing's going to my meds. I would basically be the okay face meme. Once I was on my meds, I stopped reacting the way he wanted me to, and he kept getting angrier and angrier. He kept escalating his manipulation until one day, after a fight of him telling me how badly he wanted to leave me again. Usually he starts calling apartments in front of me while I sob for him not to break up the family. I told him go if he's so desperate to leave. I went out to dinner with my dad and I came back to the house full of boxes and him locked in the room. I didn't talk to him because I knew this was another manipulation tactic to try and get me to cry. I didn't cry. Instead, I called my mom and asked if I can come sleep over there. He drove me because he said that if I took the car, this wasn't going to work, which obviously meant him leaving. He flat out said that he has an apartment in a different state 12 hours away from my family and any sort of support I could have, and asked if I was coming with him or not. I said no. He said then goodbye, threw everything out of the car onto the driveway of my mom's house and screeched out. He left at 5:00 a.m. the next morning, and I didn't accept any of his calls or texts for a week. What actually did, he had the nicest tone on telling me that he never left me and that this was a business trip that we had talked about. Again, if I was off my meds, I might have believed him and doubted my own sanity. But I knew for a fact we had not talked about it, and all of his actions the night before proved otherwise. Also, he stole my computer. To this day, he blames my medicine for why our relationship is broken. In a way, he's right. My medicine was the only way I was able to see the abuse for what it was. My mother died. He did the bare minimum of sympathy and support for a few weeks, then got angry and disgusted at the fact that I was still grieving. We were apart for 2 weeks. I flew to meet him. He was waiting at the airport for me. As I descended the escalator, I could see him standing there, and I felt no happiness. After every disagreement ended with her playing the victim, blaming her exes or her childhood, and me having to apologize for it. She did have trauma, but that wasn't my fault. She clearly wasn't ready to move on yet. I hope she was able to process her trauma and get into a healthy relationship, but I have a feeling she went back to the toxic ex. It was about 7 months after she moved half the country away. I was in denial the whole time. 16 years we were together. I spent a year in mental torment and depression. When he hesitated to say I love you on multiple occasions for years into the relationship, and got defensive when I asked if he still loved me, when I was finding more and more excuses not to spend time with WoW for K upvotes. Didn't expect my comment to take off like this. This all happened like 10 years ago, so it's not anything that I'm currently dealing with. Taking phone calls in a different outside around corner for 10 minutes before coming made to not have sex, or complaints about touchy and hugs felt empty. Body call texts with very slow you get them. While the phone is always within reach, less no interest or asking first in seeing you or doing anything. Saying nice things and showing nothing in action. And an mentor in science passed away unexpectedly before telling me that she cheated on me in the first month of our relationship, and that she wanted to have me and some other dude as her boyfriends. She wasn't one bit contrite or remorseful, and she timed it so that she could tell me in the first 24 hours after my friend died, just to ensure that I was already twisting in the breeze emotionally when she skewered me with that one. Out of interest, I wound up getting to know the other dude pretty well when we were kind of forced to rely on each other for sanity checks, because this girl was gaslighting the holy fuck out of us both. So I wound up with a friend out of that deal, and then moved on. Blocked me on her social media, which actually helped me get some closure. Straight up, I dodged a bullet on that one. So did do. When I stopped believing his lies. You cannot be in love if you cannot be truthful, and you are not a good person if all you do is lie. Once you get that gut feeling that something is off. I've ignored it twice in my lifetime, and never again. When he told me he didn't want me to go to grad school because I would be smarter than him. This was after a few years of him asking me to put it off for money reasons. It should have been when I found out he peed in bottles when he was watching porn on the computer so that he didn't have to get up and interrupt his watching. I plugged my ex's old phone, and we were married at the time, so I could factory restore it and let the kids use it for Netflix, or was still signed into Facebook. Immediately I got a live feed of her conversation with another dude. I saw a message that included "sucked you off," and that pretty much did it. On top of the fact that this was going on for like 9 months, and she painted a picture that she was a single mom with a deadbeat baby daddy, fed the kids, waited for her to come home, tucked them in, and confronted her. I'm sick just thinking about for years ago, and it still hurts. Thought about life without her 6 months down the road. If I saw her out and with someone else, would I be distraught or happy for her? I had no feeling of sadness thinking about that, and I knew we just weren't in love anymore. Sad, but it happens. Said me to move in together, promising to help pay bills and clean the house. Then after we moved in together, she never paid any of the bills or cleaned the house, and I lost all my savings because of it. A bunch of stuff, ultimately, but the one thing that sticks out, I got a call from my brother. He says mom's in the hospital. It looks like this. Is it somewhat nonchalant? My mother was, and still is, in perfectly good health, so this came as a shock. What? Our mother? I hear the little shit go. Oh, calm down. My brother then explains that either he misspoke or I misheard. Our 92-year-old grandmother was in the hospital dying. Sad still, but at least it wasn't shocking. Hence my brother's nonchalant manner. I get off the phone. She says, "Why did you react that way?" I thought my mother was dying, and my brother was just saying offhandedly. It freaked me out. Either way, don't react that way. It's not sexy. So I told her to get the fuck out of my apartment, and she never came back. Called a bunch. I never answered. She stopped being physical, even in playful non-sexual ways. She would always go back to the "I feel insecure in this relationship," even after hours of talking her down. Every bit of criticism I would take to heart, make my very best attempt at remedying, and it would go virtually unnoticed. There was always something I couldn't get to. I could never do well enough. She would stop communicating with me. I went to crew a rally. I'm a pit crew mechanic, and when I left I knew it was basically over. After the race I drove 7 hours back home, and she ended it a half hour later. I came to find out all this behavior is because she'd found someone else and just hadn't ended it on my end yet. It's happy though because good lord did I dodge a bullet. It just occurred to me one day that this man will never be emotionally generous with me because he either thinks I'm not worth it or he enjoys holding me at a distance. And either way, I don't have to subject myself to that from a person. We were supposed to see a marriage counselor together and he didn't make it. So there I am sitting with the therapist and she starts asking me questions about our relationship. The more I describe him, the more interested she gets till she's practically falling out of her chair at one point. She's leaning forward so much. She told me she was interested in having a one-on-one session with him. I left kind of confused because she seemed so much more interested in him than me. The next time I went to the appointment, she straight up told me that she believed he was a malignant narcissist, that he did not have a conscience, and that he actually enjoyed causing me pain. Once she said that it was like a light went off in my head, because all this time, I thought it was me. I thought something was wrong with me, and that's why he didn't love me. When she told me that he had a personality disorder, I suddenly was nothing wrong with me. There was something wrong with him. It was crazy because it's literally like I fell out of love with him overnight. And I was with him from the ages of 15 to 25. He told me we could stop using and get clean, but he would eventually want to do it again, every once in a while. I immediately left and fixed my life on my own. Now I'm almost 5 years sober, with a loving fiancé and beautiful baby girl. Removes glasses from experience say, I wanted to break up, followed by multiple head-butted in the face, punches, hits by a dumbbell, but gladly got the scissors away. Me passing out from a concussion and she goes downstairs to drink with her ex, dad and brother. Left to work in the morning with massive black eyes. Never went back to pick up the little stuff I had. When we just sat in the same room without a single thing to say to one another, there was no spark or connection. We were two ships passing in the night, quiet, deafening silence. It didn't even really hurt at that point. I wasn't me anymore. I was just her name here's boyfriend. I had to do things her way only, but not only do things her way, but to like to do things her way. Right to convince me of change college majors to the same one as her, to have more chances when we start a family. Oh, and speaking of family, I must also prefer her family to my own family. In just 1 year I no longer knew who I was. Complete identity theft. Even 10 years after we broke up, now married to a wonderful person, I still deal with trauma from that time. Are being screamed at every day and being told I cannot do anything right. I went from being an optimistic, living in the moment kind of a person to one who was depressed and developed an eating disorder. Today I prayed to the universe to either kill me or him. I realized that the emotional abuse had to end, and I deserved to feel safe, loved and good about myself. Still, with my self-esteem hitting rock bottom, it took me a few months after this realization to finally break up, but thank goodness I did. For years, I didn't share the details of that relationship with anyone and kind of dealt with all those traumatizing moments alone. But I am glad I finally told my therapist, and I worked on mustering up the courage to finally choose myself over that relationship and leave him for good. I don't want it to be over, but the blatant disregard to my emotions, empty promises, is tearing my heart out. When I found out that she never took the initiative to arrange dates, everything was arranged by me, and she was not satisfied with everything I arranged. Just one day, I stopped calling or texting her. He didn't bother to apologize anymore. He didn't take me on vacations. Him. He wanted to be alone more and more. He was angry all the time. Everything I did annoyed him, etc. Not one thing. I just woke up one morning and said to myself, this is ridiculous. We don't even like each other. We suck at communicating. Sex is impossible given our current relationship. It was an epiphany. The moment I figured out that their presence caused me to slip into long depressive episodes, and that's not what a healthy companionship should feel like, romantic or platonic. Edit what the actual fuck? How did I get SMQ DOS on this? This makes me very sad. Is everyone okay? Every time I opened my mouth she was annoying, regardless of what topic I wanted to talk about. Fuck, I just wanted to talk to my partner, but instead I was just irritating her by that alone. Fuck that nose. When they were constantly forgetting to text me and then asked me if they could date someone else too. How can you date two people if you're struggling to even date one? I was misdiagnosed with stomach cancer. Was going in to get scoped the next morning. I was scared to death. told my wife when she got home that she would need to take me the next morning. But I don't want to miss work, she said. That's the exact moment I knew my marriage was done. I realized she didn't want to be with me. We tried consoling and it seemed to work for a while. About a year later she cheated. From what she told me, it was the first time, but who knows with all the lies she spewed that day. I kick myself now because I was so conflicted on marrying her. In the end I gave in to my guilt and did wish I could go back now. I kissed her goodbye after a day out and realized I didn't kiss her because I was happy to, or excited to, or wanted to. I kissed her because I knew she was expecting me to and I felt obligated. Whenever she'd be anywhere else than home, I felt relief and I would panic when she would come home. During a 2-month break, I was nowhere near as stressed as I had been for the entirety of our 6-year relationship. It was toxic as hell, and it gave me a lot of baggage that I'm still working through 5 months later. Only now that I'm out of it can I realize how much it has changed me over the years. I still very much care for my ex, and I know we wish the best for each other, but fuck did we not need to be together. TLDR, if your partner has a personality disorder and refuses to accept help or move towards self-improvement, leave. You don't need that stress. I got really sick, in the mind and the body. He wasn't very supportive, but I didn't realize it at first. It wasn't until it started interfering with our sex life, and suddenly he had a bunch of ideas on how to address that problem, that I realized he only cared about what he received from me. Looking back, there were a lot of really bad things about that relationship, even before I got sick. We dated for 3 years, and were engaged for a year. Why trying to manipulate me into hating my family, lying about the cost of the wedding, and trying to gaslight me about things I knew she was doing, so I'd look crazy and seem like a liar to her friends. Airing it all about how I felt, or how angry her actions were making me, and the fact the wedding was becoming all about her and her wanting to upstage her sister's wedding that happened 8 years ago. All of that has led to severe depression and anxiety that has caused me months of suicidal ideation and thoughts. When I called shit off, her only concern was getting pictures of the wedding band we had recently purchased and packing her shit and leaving. She wasn't at all concerned that I was suicidal and depressed because of her crap. I had a week left to return the ring, so I obviously wanted it back so I could return it. She took it, lied about leaving it at my place, and for 2 days kept saying she didn't have it. My family threatened to press petty larceny charges, and 5 minutes later I had the ring back and no so much as an apology. I'm no longer with her, and I feel like I dodged a bullet, but it also looks like she's taken my friends and has ruined my reputation with them by running her mouth about me. So that's just made shit worse. When I realized my cat wasn't lost or dead, he put himself up for adoption and found a home he liked better. When I was in fuzzy pajamas, curled up in a fetal position in bed, crying because my father died rather suddenly, and my boyfriend tried to initiate sex by smacking my butt with his flaccid penis. Seeing him flirt online as if he was single, and if I confronted he would make me cry and then ask me to finally take a picture so he could post of us. He knew I wouldn't want to pick in that state, that he wasn't meeting my emotional needs. It became clear that he was just emotionally unavailable and wasn't even meeting the bare minimum. But it's sad that I realized he wasn't meeting my needs in the relationship, but he was the one to break it off. We fought constantly, mostly about him wanting to go to raves and do drugs, while I had grown out of that lifestyle and was no longer interested in partaking in it with him. When I woke up as a freshman in college, seeing a text from my off-again-on-again high school senior girlfriend that says, "Hey mom, I'm staying at Hunter's house. My name is not Hunter." When I realized how incompatible we were, I was more of a stay-at-home and spend time with each other kind of person, and he wanted to go out drinking every weekend. I usually went with what he wanted to do because he would get pissy if we didn't go. Eventually my wallet and my health got tired of going out, so the next time, I decided I was going to put my foot down on staying, and he went out anyway alone. That was it for me. I was in an abusive relationship, and once she got her mom to tell me off, I snapped and went ham on them. It was a bridge that I finally burned, and I knew after that I never wanted to see them again. It was a Sunday morning. We were reading the paper, and I said, "Oh my God, the Eagles could clinch the NFC East 10, she said. "We're done." Hearing the guy she was cheating on me with telling her to come back to bed as she was breaking up with me on the phone. Well, he knocked her up and she miscarried, and is now hooked on meth, so I guess karma's a bitch. He had not touched me in 3 years. If I tried to initiate, he would flinch and ask me to stop. At my father's funeral, I needed comfort. I put my arm around him to cry into his side, and he flinched. At my father's funeral, I knew something was up. I tried approaching him about him not wanting physical contact, thinking something had happened to him, and I was unaware checking if he was raped or something, and nothing. It's been 3 years since we broke up. We still talk. I asked him to come over the night I found out my friend died. He told me he couldn't because he just sat down to watch a movie at his friend's house. I wasn't even upset because it provided me with the clarity I'd been seeking for years. Of all the gaslighting, lies, and pure bullshit, the one thing that made me say hell no was how he came home one day and told me a conversation he had with a colleague. The guy said, "When you have kids in the next 5 years, because you absolutely will." I fucking noped out so hard. My ex was doing his damnedest to cheat on me, couldn't find a willing participant, and mentally destroying me, but the thought of having his child gave me the heebiest of jeebies. He told me if I was raped he'd give me 3 months to be sad about it, and then I'd have to be over it because he hates people who complain. I know you probably meant this in a romantic context, but I distinctly remember when I realized my childhood best friend drifted away from me. In elementary school, she moved about 30 minutes away, just enough that we could do sleepovers and stuff, but weren't together on a daily basis anymore. We still hung out, but as we got busy in middle school and made new friends, etc., it became less and less frequent, and we had less in common, as we each had our own life experiences. Freshman year, she invited me to her sleepover birthday party, and I felt like such a complete outsider, as it was just me and all of her new school friends in attendance. When my mom picked me up, I cried the entire drive home because the finality hit me like a ton of bricks. We still talk on Facebook and the like, but time marches on and we just grew apart. When she had the police called on her because a random girl got my number from a friend and texted me, "Hey, sorry if this is weird, but I got your number from ... and I think you're really cute." My girlfriend snatched my phone, called her, and started screaming at her at the top of her lungs. It was so embarrassing. I remember looking at my friend and saying, "Fuck this, I'm done. Let's go." We were inside a packed hookah lounge, so everyone was staring and laughing. I stuck to it too. After 3 years, I'd had enough. She was just way too jealous for me. As for the girl who texted me, I apologized for my nags. We never ended up talking after that for obvious reasons, lol. She did feel bad and genuinely didn't know I was dating someone. I basically did la la la. I can't hear you to a whole slew of warning signs, but two things permeated my thick skull. None of my friends were eager to hang out with her. It's a sign of the times, but I didn't wait to watch Game of Thrones with her. She worked Sunday nights, so I'd watch it myself that night, then with her later in the week, realizing that watching a dragon show the night it came out was more important than experiencing it with her. Somehow that is what opened the floodgates for I don't enjoy spending time with this person. When she decided to stay at her parents' house over Mother's Day weekend, that point, especially since we had a happy Easter, but she was taking the time to tell her parents she was separating and figure out how to have them cosign on a new house loan for her and her kid. It was for the best though. My depression and suicidal thoughts have very significantly decreased since then, as the toxic relationship was the main source of it. We took a break due to the myriad of problems we were having. She was re-energized when the break was over. I realized I was done. If you get annoyed at small stuff that you wouldn't even feel right talking about with others because it's petty, y'all aren't a match. When I confronted her about her alleged cheating, and she just started crying. I've had my heart broken through rejection, but that one still stings over a decade later. It dawned on me one day that she had likely never thought of me throughout her day. She was never initiating any call text dates unless she needed something. I was blinded by my heart since the first months of dating were so good, and just kinda waited for things to return to normal. Obviously more to it, but this sums it up. When she stopped calling me handsome and saying, "I love you," and started thirsting over girls as a joke every time we went out together. It hurt hard at first, but I'm glad she now knows who she is and is happier. She said she hasn't loved me for months and was staying with me to not hurt my alert. My feelings were hurt way more. Getting kicked out, broken up with, then finding out she'd given everything I owned away for free. Gonna venture out and say it had been over in her mind for a bit longer than it had in mine. I was at work with a sprained ankle that turned out to be broken as well, but X-ray results were delayed getting to me, and they sent me on my way. The clinic called me later and wanted me to come right back ASAP to fit me for a boot instead of just an ankle brace. spend if he could drive me a few blocks away right after work to make it for their last appointment at the clinic, and he said that time wasn't going to work because that's when his daily bike ride is. I asked him if he had plans with someone else or if it was an organized ride, and he said no, he just didn't know if he would feel motivated to do it if he waited an hour. Mind you, the sun would be up for another 3-4 hours still. I don't think he was being malicious, but it was a wake-up call all the same when she told me that some childhood friend she had been texting to rekindle their friendship told her he liked her. I didn't feel jealous or upset that she could leave me for anyone else. That's a new level of losing interest in someone. 5 years into the relationship, I told him my dream of being a concert reviewer photographer, but that I needed to quit drinking so much to get there. He said you'll never do it. I left him. Did it. Bought a job at the Village Voice. Coming up on 11 years, without alcohol next month. He's still in our hometown drinking at the same bars. I'd been published all over the country. I came home from a business trip on Valentine's Day, and there were 24 roses on the table. I didn't send them. We started divorce proceedings a couple of days later. I wish it was just one definitive thing, but it was a slow death and everyone caught in before me. It was a death of 1,000 small cuts. We were long distance and would do online roleplay together to get frisky. Ring the pandemic during this, so I was already emotionally drained and strung out, especially since I was quarantining as much as possible and not at work due to working with adults with disabilities. He drops on me a starter where he godmods my character, a sweetheart who likes to help people and sells flowers, sexually assaulting a war vet with PTSD, in a public setting. I don't play it out and try to talk to him about it. A toddler meltdown involving telling me he shouldn't be writing out our starters since I'm clearly so good at it, and I shouldn't be talking to him like that at all, and eventually storming off to bed. At the time, I shrugged and figured we could talk about it the next day. The usual pattern when he had these meltdowns is we would talk it out the next day and work through it like adults. I get off work and get online to try to talk to him, and he starts yelling at me. He called me controlling for essentially having boundaries and saying no to him about multiple things in the past. At one point he said I controlled him by forcing him to date me because I was the one who made the first move in our relationship by asking him out in the first place. That's when I decided I was going to dump him. It took me a month or so due to emotional exhaustion from work and trying to figure out a good way to break up with him while long distance. I still respected him enough I wanted to have an adult conversation with him about it. Then a close friend died of COVID and I just left a message telling him we were through and not to contact me anymore. I just couldn't deal with him anymore on top of everything else going on. He hasn't contacted me, and honestly, breaking it off and unloading that emotional burden increased my overall mental health enough. I finally finished my degree and changed jobs. When he had a close family friend die, I sat next to him trying to figure out the proper words to say, and knowing there was nothing good enough. I told him I was sorry and that I would be there for him. I told him that I knew that it was hard and there was little I could do. We sat together and he cried. I held him. A month later he told me that I don't care about him because I wasn't there for him after his friend died. I was floored. I could not fathom what I could have done better. When my sister died on my 12th birthday, I was hollow. Everyone said so much, but it didn't do. Took me 2 years to leave that man. He kept telling me that I broke his trust by not being there for him that day. I loved him deeply, and I couldn't even breathe when he said this. I finally told him to get the fuck out. I never wanted to talk to him again. 2 years ago I saw him in the store parking lot. He walked up to me and gave me a hug. He was crying hard. We hadn't seen each other or spoken in over a year. He told me he loved me. He said he was sorry. I have never been so mad in my life. Mad that I hugged him back. Mad that I was crying. Mad at all of the shit he put me through. Mad at how I treated him sometimes. I was no angel. Mostly I was mad that I still love him, and that we could never be together. And that fucking hurts so badly. We tried really hard to figure it out. We were in love even when we broke up, but we both knew we wanted different things in life. She wanted to live near her friends and her hometown. I wanted to close to work, near my family, and in the house I already seems to be happy now, and I'm making do. I tried dating again, but I just can't get into it yet. I'll probably just stay single for a while.